When I first started using metal clay, I was very familiar with the normal Art Clay Silver, which is my favourite brand of clay, but I was less familiar with the paper type of clay that's made by the same company. So I thought it would be helpful for others to do a review and discuss some of the differences between the two. The first thing that you'll notice is at the bottom here it says for kiln firing only. Whilst it is better to kiln fire, you can actually torch fire small pieces of jewellery. So don't be put off using this. If you're going to be making smallish items, torch firing is fine. You would fire with a torch until the binders burnt away and you'd see a small flame and some smoke, and then you'd keep the torch concentrated on the piece until it turns a salmon pink colour, and then you keep torch firing for 5 to 10 minutes after that. If you want to know how to fire in a kiln, inside when you open the packet you get instructions that are written in Japanese on one side and English in the other. If we now look at the paper itself, it's in a muslin bag and it's actually stored in that to keep it dry and free of moisture. This is one of the main differences. With normal art clay silver that comes in the clay form, you have to store that and keep it moist so that the clay doesn't dry out. With this, it's completely different. Moisture is the enemy, so you need to keep this as dry as you possibly can. And when you take it out the packet, it looks very different. You'll see that it's bright silver in colour, very malleable. You can tear it if you want to, you can cut it, and it feels like velvet, although it looks like aluminium foil that you would cook with. Now to cut it, you can use normal scissors, a scalpel or a craft knife. And I've seen some tutorials online where you can actually cut the sheet into strips and then you make a basket weave with it, which is very effective. Now, because this is very malleable, one of the downsides is that if I were to press my nail in here now, I would make a mark. So you do have to keep this, you have to be aware that you can mark it and treat it very gently. The other thing is, if you do mark it, you can't sand or file it when it's in this stage. You have to do all of that post-firing. What this is absolutely fabulous for is making origami type jewellery. And here's a necklace that I made about a year ago. The body is made using the sheet that has been folded using instructions from a book that had a tutorial for metal clay origami. What I've done with this pendant, however, is I've used the more familiar lump clay here for the body of the butterfly, and I've used here some wire, some fine silver wire for the antennae, and on the back I've also used a bail made from the lump clay. What you can see, however, is that this has some quite straight edges that could be sharp against the skin. So after firing, what I did was I filed these away. So whilst I couldn't fire them before firing, I can file them afterwards. You can also use craft punches to cut through the sheet. And I've already put a tutorial online that you can download for a pair of earrings that are made using just the paper type clay and cutters. It's a very simple tutorial and you'll find it on my channel. Other main differences, apart from making sure that you store it in a dry atmosphere, is that if you're joining two pieces together, you can't add water. If you do it using water, it actually dissolves the paper. So you have to use art clay silver. One of the issues though is that if you use too much, it will dissolve that again. So you do have to use this very sparingly. With the metal clay that you're probably more familiar with, this has an 8 to 10% shrinkage after firing. With the paper clay, it is slightly more, and it's about 12%. Another main difference is that when you have made a piece with your metal clay, using this lump clay, you would set it aside to dry using a dehydrator, an oven, a radiator, or something like that, maybe even a hairdryer. You can't do that with this paper type clay. This has to be set aside to dry naturally. So you just leave it alone. Depends on how warm the room is. If you want to be super careful, you would leave it for 24 hours. Overnight is a good starting point though. So I hope that it's going to encourage you to use this. It's actually much easier to use and far less can go wrong than if you're using the Silver Art clay. What I would suggest if you're going to do any sort of origami type jewellery is that you practice first with folding paper before you actually try and fold this. Now the reason for that is each time you make a fold, you will actually make a line in the paper, and that can't come out. Once it's been folded, it's folded. So practice on paper before you start opening this and playing with your silver paper. I hope you've enjoyed that review and that it's just told you a little bit more about what you can and you can't do with the silver paper. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments box below. Alternatively, you can message me via my website, which is www.artisan-alchemy.net. Thank you for watching.